Hello, leader. Welcome back to the Fierce Factor podcast. I have taken over. You are tuning into a special podcast takeover series called Develop Your Voice of Impact. Over 3 Power Pack sessions, I am going to teach you how to become a more confident, engaging, and dynamic communicator online, in person, and on stage. My name is Krista Donargo, and I am a strategic growth advisor who coaches alongside Kaylee and our expert advisory team at KLC. While my job is to help inspiring and intentional female entrepreneurs cross their next $1 million milestone this year, the cornerstone of work I do with our clients is built around guiding them to be more inspiring leaders in all aspects of their business and life. I spend my days coaching high-growth women on executive presence and persuasive communication. I've worked with Fortune 500 leaders, corporate CEOs, and incredibly talented female founders who are all brilliant at their craft, but not always as confident communicating in high-pressure situations. If you're someone who's ready to be more engaging on social, more inspiring for your team, and more magnetizing when you're in the spotlight, this week's podcast is for you. So let's dive in.
All right, Krista. We've talked about showing up on camera and owning your authority in content creation. But now let's talk about live moments. Whether that's a keynote on stage, sitting on a panel, or training your team. What's different about speaking live versus recorded content? And what are the biggest mistakes you see high-level founders making when they're delivering presentations?
I'm so glad that you asked me this question about the differentiation between the different modes of communication, because anyone who has worked on camera versus on stage knows that these are totally different beasts. And while we still need to be engaging for all of them, while we still need to obviously prepare for all of them, what is required of us is slightly different. So when I'm on camera with you right now, I know I have a frame. I know how I can move engagingly within that frame. It's just a different energy. I know there's no one really other than you, and I know there will be a lot of people seeing this, but other than you, there's really no one here that I'm talking to. I know you're my audience, but I also know that the audience is, who knows, tons of people. While when you're on stage, there's something different. I love being on stage in front of people because you get energy from people. You get to pick up on little moments here and there. And if you are a present speaker, if you are comfortable and relaxed on stage, you can really use people's energy to heighten your speech, make you a more engaging speaker. So something that I see often as a mistake when people are live and in front of people is they bury themselves in their notes. Oh, I've done it before many times. When I was first starting, my notes were my security blanket, and I would just go into my notes, I would close off my body, and I was just reading. So that is one huge mistake that I see people make. I mean, I don't think it's good for camera either, but that's a huge mistake that I see people make on stage and in person, on panels or in trainings. They're just lost in their notes, or they're overly rehearsed. That's another big one. If you prepare so well that you memorize all your lines, and then you get on stage or you get in front of the person interviewing you, and you know exactly what they're going to ask you, and you have a perfect answer for it, you run the risk of sounding like a robot, sounding monotone, or even sounding rehearsed. Listeners are smart these days. They know when people are reading from a script or they've said the same answer a million times over, that it's kind of on autopilot. So being live, whether you're in a training with your team, like whatever, it begs you to be present. It begs you to be comfortable and able to flex and shift and become adaptable to whatever happens.
What happens when you're speaking and things don't go as planned? So I'm sure everyone, like you got to rehearse and you have to plan and be prepared to some degree, but what happens when you're speaking and someone asks a really tough question during a Q&A, or the energy in the room isn't what you expected, and people kind of might look at least like they're not energetically, for lack of better words, vibing with what you're saying, or your tech fails. So how do you coach founders to handle those curveball moments with authority instead of panic?
This is a great question. This is something I've personally experienced many times when I've been on stage or speaking in front of a live audience. One example I have is 2 years ago when I was speaking at Aesthetic Next, I had one of those old-fashioned microphone things, and it was kind of like a coat hanger that they put behind my ears, and I felt like Britney Spears with my little thing that came out. And in the middle of my speech, I felt like this sharp pain in the back of my ear because the wire part had just dug into a nerve. And in the middle of my speech, I had to stop for a moment and collect myself and have the tech guy readjust my microphone. And was it fun? No. Was it something that tripped me up? Absolutely. But what did I do? I said, excuse me 1 second, guys, this coat hanger microphone is digging into the side of my ear. I need to get it fixed. And they just were able to adjust it. I came back on stage. I was able to finish. I made a joke about it. It went fine. So can we predict what's gonna happen? No. Is our audio always gonna work? No. Is our clicker when we're doing our slides gonna fail us? Yes, it will. The point is, if we are prepared and comfortable with the material, and again, we are in the mindset of being there to serve, not being there to look perfect, not being there to sound perfect, then we'll be able to just, as they say, roll with the punches. And I think this is something that trips people up because we're so obsessed with presenting as perfect. So that's one thing that I help coach people get over. I'd say another thing that could happen is you are in an audience that maybe there's a few, as we say, haters out there. And you see someone in the audience who's not smiling at you, or they don't look engaged, or maybe they're on their phone when you're talking. That can really mess someone up, because if you're nervous and you're like, oh my God, no one's even listening to me, that can be really hard. So one thing I love to coach people on is find your cheerleaders. Look to the audience, and I promise you there will be at least one person following along, smiling and nodding at you. Focus on them. Everybody else, don't worry about them. Focus on your cheerleaders. There will always be a few people who are disengaged or disinterested in the audience. Don't focus your attention on them. Don't worry about them.
I agree. And also, it's funny because when you were talking about the whole situation with the headset, I think those moments also give people the opportunity to just be more playful and to connect more with the people that they might be on stage and talking to. Because I feel like it almost takes you out of this I'm a presenter mode and gives you the opportunity to be like, okay, well, I'm going to, make light of an annoying situation and maybe have the opportunity for a pattern interrupt for a second, or to just connect with the people that you're communicating with. So I think that although they can shift things and maybe put someone in a bad mood, I think there's also opportunity to actually leverage those moments as well.
Absolutely. And I'm glad you brought that up, because a technique that I have and that I give people when they're really nervous on stage is facilitate a conversation. Don't think that you're the only person that has to talk. Ask your audience questions. Let them voice their opinions. And what that does is it takes a lot of pressure off of you being the only one speaking, and it just breaks the ice. It gets people talking, it gets people conversational. It's such a great technique if you're nervous and you have the opportunity. Facilitate a conversation. What I even like to do is I like to bring myself already to the front of the room and just begin conversing with people. It warms me up. It gets people connected to me before I have to start presenting, before I have to get on stage, before I have to, deliver my message. So that's another really, really great technique. So I'm glad you brought that up. Yeah, you can absolutely facilitate more of a conversation with people.
I know when you and Kaylee have prepared me to speak Or I went through voice of impacts with you. And I remember one of the things that you would talk to me about is pattern interrupts. Like, no matter how great your presentation is, like, you have to have moments where you're kind of breaking up all of the talking or education or whatever it is. I think we've all sat through presentations where someone is brilliant, but within 10 minutes, everyone's glazing over or checking their phones. So tell me more about pattern interrupts. What are they, and how can founders use them strategically throughout a presentation to keep people leaned in?
I love pattern interrupts. I talk about them all the time. I don't think enough people utilize them, and I truly don't think we are an audience of people who have a long attention span. And I actually think there's research that says human beings have an attention span of about 5 minutes. I actually think that's an older study, and I do think that's pre-COVID. I think post-COVID, our attention span has gotten shorter and shorter. So that being said, if you are giving a presentation that is longer than 2 to 5 minutes, you better have some pattern interrupts in there. What is a pattern interrupt? It's something that interrupts the pattern. It's something that throws someone off of what you are normally doing. So if you are speaking at the audience for 5 minutes, a pattern interrupt could be showing a video, showing a photo of something, showing a statistic or a graph. It could be a conversation, a Q&A. So those are things that we need to be baking into all of our presentations. I don't care if it's a training or a onstage presentation or just a meeting with our team. We need to make sure we are getting people's attention, and a pattern interrupt will force someone to re-engage. It will allow someone to refocus their energy because we're throwing them off. So pattern interrupts need to be incorporated into any of our presentations. I don't care who we're presenting to. The other thing I wanted to touch upon was impromptu questions, and I get this a lot. Women who do panels, women who are asked questions, they're asked to be a guest on an important Q&A. I recently coached someone who was going to be on a panel. She was a master esthetician, and she was going to be on a panel. I believe it was, I forget what conference it was, but she was going to be on a panel with one of her idols, an esthetician that she admired so much. And she was really nervous about getting asked questions that she didn't know the answer to. And what I like to remind people when they're asked a question they don't know the answer to is, it's better to say you don't know elegantly than to pretend like you do know and put your foot in your mouth with a 5-minute long rambling answer. So what more confident can you, like, it's so confident when someone says, you know what, that's a great question. I don't know the answer, but I'm curious myself. I really want to find out. I'm gonna find out later. Maybe I'll get back to you about it. What a cool, calm, collected response. We are not on a panel because we know everything in the world. We are not walking encyclopedias. We're on stage, we are on panels because we can offer a really unique perspective that only we can offer. And that's what I like to help people center around is it's not about you knowing all the answers or being more expert on stage. It's about you giving your unique perspective on something. So one, when you're asked impromptu questions, first, if you don't know the answer, acknowledge it and say, I just don't know. But that's such a great question. Or whatever your thoughts are about that question, be transparent. I think that shows such confidence. And another thing would just be to allow yourself the time to collect your thoughts. A lot of people get asked questions and their first response is something that I call a verbal virus. And that is the so. And what's happening in that moment is our mind is really just taking a moment to connect our thoughts and to collect ourselves. But instead of doing that, I tell people, if you're asked a question you need to collect your thoughts on, is that something you do?
I do all of them.
We all do.
Yeah.
We're human. We have verbal viruses. It's okay. The problem is when we are saying it so much that it takes away from our message. All people can hear is or like. We all know someone who says like every other moment,
yes.
and all we can focus on is the like. We can't even hear what they're saying. So if that comes up for you, if that's something you struggle with, take a breath. Do not be scared of taking a moment for yourself. We are so scared of silence. I don't know what it is about human beings. We are so scared of silence. We'd rather fill the silence with a sound like so like, than actually take a moment to collect ourselves. So I always tell people, take the breath, be selfish, take a moment. Nobody's gonna notice. It's okay. It sounds way more credible than starting your answer with a like, or a. We want to avoid that at all cost.
Mine is the worst. It's I think. I'll literally say something that's like 100%. I think the sky's blue. I'm like, what? No. I say that one a lot. I hate it.
I think.
Yeah. I
So
think.
you kind of, sorta, do you do that?
Yeah.
That's hedging language. Women tend to do that a lot because we're scared to kind of hold authority. Yeah. So we say, well, it's a little bit, I kind of think this, it's maybe kind of like that. I mean, men do it too, but women are way more susceptible to that. And we're just scared to land with a sentence of, this is what I think, this is what it is, this is what it's not. So I think hedging language is something we all have to be aware of, especially when we're not super confident about a subject matter that we're talking about.
Yeah. Let's talk about those critical first few minutes. Whether you're opening up a keynote, kicking off a training, or introducing yourself on a panel, what makes a hook or opening actually compelling? And how do you craft one that pulls people in without feeling gimmicky or overproduced or inauthentic?
These questions are great because they really have the answers baked into them.
Yeah.
So what I would say is that anyone who's worked with me, especially on a presentation, knows that I am not going to let you get off the hook with getting on stage and introducing yourself with your credentials.
Yeah.
Nobody cares. Nobody cares how many DNP, FPC, nobody cares. If you want to say a few, great. Credential yourself briefly. If you want to tell me every single plastic surgeon you've worked with and every single accolade you have, I do not care. And I'll tell you what, nobody else cares either. So instead of having us all glaze over, if you've worked with me, you know I am not going to let you get away with that. I am going to challenge you to start with a hook. What is a hook? It's simply a pattern interrupt. That's all. Something that grabs people's attention, something that's a little bit different than everything else that you're about to do. Some of my favorite hooks are personal stories, fun facts. Of course, these should all be in alignment with what you are talking about. A provocative statistic, a funny meme, a video, a photo, a graph, anything that is going to make someone say, oh, what's that? That's interesting. That's not what I was expecting. That's what I want you to open with. Those first crucial moments when you are on stage can make or break how someone receives the rest of your presentation. You want to win people over. Another common mistake I see when people get up on stage and they don't give a hook is they also don't smile when they walk up on stage and they look angry or upset. This usually comes from nerves. So that's one thing I do coach on is be aware of how you're showing up physically when you are in front of anyone. I don't care if you're in front of a patient and it's just a one-on-one situation. If you are not confidently standing, if you are closed off or kind of doing one of these or, doing any sort of little idiosyncratic behavior that shows you're nervous, you are not going to come across as the authority you want to be. You're not going to come across as confident. So whether you're on stage with your team, in a training, or even with a client, how you show up physically is really important. And that's something I'm really passionate about coaching on. That's something that I always touch upon. No matter what we are working on, physical presence is just as important because our body language speaks just as loudly as our words.
Okay, I hear you. I do think, though, when we talk about nerves and how that can kind of like if you have those idiosyncratic behaviors, I understand that
I call them pacifiers too, because like a baby will calm their nerves with a pacifier. We all have pacifiers. We all play with our hair.
I do that.
Or we fidget with our clothing, which I'm about to do right now. Or we, rub our chin. I mean, we all have those behaviors. First part is acknowledging we all have them. Second part is identifying which one's yours.
Okay. But so every seasoned founder, though, I mean, I'm not going to say everyone. I think most people, even the ones that you wouldn't think get nervous before big speaking moments.
Sure.
So what's your take on nerves, and do you have any techniques that actually work to help someone ground themselves before they walk on stage or into a high stakes training?
The first thing you have to remember is people only will see what you show them. We as human beings think that we are made of glass and that everyone can see what's going on inside, what we're feeling, all of our nerves. But the truth is, they can only see what we show them. So if we're nervous, that's okay. Most people are nervous. It means you care. It's a good thing. So that's first. Second is, how am I presenting myself to show that I'm nervous? So if we can at least be aware and not do the behaviors that show nerves, whatever that is for you, whether it's like rubbing our hands together or closing ourselves off or whatever it is that shows our nerves, that's one great adjustment that you can make that can really help you present as confident, even if you're not. And I think that's a really big distinction to make is it's okay if you're nervous. It's about how you're showing up, how you're presenting. And also, I teach a lot of breathing. I just tell people, are you breathing? Are you making sure you have your breath? Because something that happens when we don't take in enough oxygen is our thoughts we lose them. We go blank. We're not taking in enough oxygen. Our heart rate increases. These are all things that will contribute to how horrible we are feeling in those moments. So we need to breathe. We need to say, yeah, I'm nervous. It means I care. So that reframe is super important. And we need to make sure we are presenting our bodies and ourselves as confident, even if we're not feeling confident.
I think we covered a lot of really great conceptual, we did cover a lot of tactical things too, but if you had to end this giving someone a few tips of actual actions that they could implement when they're on stage to really make their presentation or their panel feel more connected with their audience and make their communication more effective, what would those key few things to keep in mind be?
Yeah. Well, first, I just want to say this is the very reason I came up with this mini intensive, Speaking with Authority, for public speaking, presentations, and panels, because presentation and preparation is truly all you need to focus on. So working with a coach is going to be step one. If you are someone who is prepping to do that, aspiring to do that, working with a coach is like the first thing that you can do, because preparation, the work that you do beforehand, is going to lend itself so much to how confident you feel in that moment. Because in that moment, you're going to be a little bit nervous, but the more prepared you are, the more you've worked with a coach, the more you've practiced, that is going to really help you in those moments. So that's the first thing I'd say. I'd also say not being afraid of sharing a personal story or adding that in last minute during a presentation, a panel, especially if you're answering questions, adding a personal story in there. Any opportunity that you have, I think it's really important. I worked with a client who I absolutely adored, Cece from Vein by Cece, and she was asked to give a presentation on something she was very, very knowledgeable of for I believe it was for a conference or a training. And We talked a lot about the presentation. We worked through her slides together. That's something else that I also help people with in my coaching. But as we were working together, what I said to her was, you are a powerhouse. You know exactly what you're talking about. You are such an expert. That's not what I'm worried about here. What I want from you is I want you to share with me a personal story so I can relate to you as an audience member. So we crafted together, as part of her opening was a personal story, was an analogy that she used for aging. And it was really, really helpful for us to be grounded. It was really helpful with all of that heavy information to really lighten the load and set the tone for her being someone who was approachable, an expert, but also a human being and relatable. It made me want to listen to her. The fact that she opened with something personal. So I'd say, when in doubt, tell a story. If I can give any one piece of advice to anyone who's nervous or worried about being boring or has a lot of information to share, because oftentimes we get very clinical in our presentations, let's give it a human life. Share a story about your client who had this treatment done. Give it a name, let's not just talk clinically. Or if it's a presentation where we're talking about something very scientific, make it more human, make it connected to something in your personal life. That is what's going to set apart the good speakers from the great speakers and presenters. Okay, goddess. If you're nodding your head, feeling the pull to expand your voice in a way that matches the level of leadership you desire, I have a brand new offer for you. For a limited time, KLC will be offering brand new Voice of Impact mini intensives. These are personalized one-on-one coaching sessions designed for high-performing founders who are done playing small with their communication. During these sessions, I will help you build a customized thought leadership plan, teach you how to command a room, communicate with authority, and use your voice as a strategic asset, whether you're leading your team, showing up online, or stepping onto bigger stages. If you're curious which path to take, I invite you to book a call with me. We'll talk through where you're at right now, what specific techniques we can implement to make a massive impact on your leadership voice and personal brand presence. You can head to klcconsultants.com/leadershipvoice to learn more about our Voice of Impact mini intensives and book your call in the show notes.